In a world where size meant power, he was born smaller than a sword, mocked, displayed, gifted like a toy to royalty. But this little boy from Oakham wasn't meant to be anyone's joke. He'd fight duels, command armies, face pirates, and vanish into the shadows of history, forgotten. Until now, this is the unbelievable true story of Lord Minimus Threakennaw, the smallest soldier in history with the biggest will to survive. It's 1619, and in the small town of Oakham, England, a boy named Jeffrey Hudson's born. While for the most part, he looks like a completely normal newborn, his parents soon begin suspecting something is very wrong. Time passes and he learns to crawl, to walk, and to talk, but he never grows any taller than his birth height. At 3, he's still just 19 inches tall. Now back in the 1600s, little people were considered barely above animals. And Jeffrey's father was well aware of this. Looking at his tiny boy running around, he could only see an incredibly difficult life in store for him. What would happen to little Jeffrey when he and his wife passed away? Who would take care of him? Luckily, due to his job as the keeper of the baiting bulls for the Duke of Buckingham, Jeffrey's father saw one path that could possibly give his son a somewhat respectable life. So when Jeffrey turns 7, his father brings him to the Duchess of Buckingham and presents him as a gift. See, little people, or dwarves as they were known, back then were often collected by nobility as curiosities that were used to entertain guests. Jeffrey was blessed in the sense that though he was small, he was perfectly proportionate. With no deformities or disabilities, he was, for all intents and purposes, just a little person. The Duchess stares at Jeffrey like she's seeing a shiny Pokemon in real life and immediately accepts him, and he joins her court. Now, around this time, the Duke and Duchess were expecting a visit from the King and his new French bride, Queen Henrietta Marie, and they thought that Jeffrey would be the ultimate surprise and delight for their dinner guests at the banquet. A large pie is placed on the table in front of the royal couple. The Queen stares at the pie, wondering what surprise might be hiding inside, when suddenly, on command, Jeffrey, dressed in a tiny suit of armor, bursts from the pie crust and starts aggressively dueling an invisible opponent with his tiny sword. The Queen finds this hilarious. How is someone this small? Even real, she must have him. And so the Duchess gives Jeffrey to the Queen, and he travels back with her to London. Jeffrey joins the Queen's collection of oddities and quickly becomes her favorite. She makes sure he has the best food and accommodations. He gets the formal education of a noble and servants that he can call upon for whatever he needs somehow. Against all odds, being tiny was not the curse he thought, and miraculously it's brought him a wonderful life. He develops a deep affection for his queen and works hard to put on the best acts he can for her guests. His hit routine was one where he partnered with one of the Queen's other curiosities, a man named William Evans, who was a giant that stood over 7 feet tall. At dinner parties, Evans would pull out a loaf of bread from one pocket and then pull Jeffrey out of his other pocket, would then cut the bread and serve it. Jeffrey was given the nickname Lord Minimus, and though he initially enjoyed the spoils of the royal life, he slowly became resentful of the golden cage he had found himself in. He realized that no matter how educated he became or what skills he worked to acquire, he would always be treated like a joke and never truly accepted as an equal by anyone. But in 1642, Jeffrey found himself with the opportunity of a lifetime to prove he was more than just a court jester. See, while Jeffrey had been busy making nobles laugh, the Queen's husband, King Charles, had been busy alienating the entire parliament of his country. Charles believed he was God's chosen monarch, and rather predictably, this point of view was badly received by nearly everyone, and so by 1642, a massive civil war broke out. Supporting the king and his queen, Jeffrey fought to take a more active role in the war. He pleaded with the queen for an official position in the royalist army, arguing that he was an expert horseman and a crack shot. The queen eventually gives in and appoints the now 23-year-old Jeffrey to captain of the horse, While many in the court saw this as a joke, Jeffrey didn't care, and he took his new job and new title seriously. But in 1644, before he had any real shot to prove himself a man beyond his inches, the royalists were clearly losing this war, and the queen flees to her homeland of France, bringing Jeffrey with her in France court life resumes, in much the same fashion as before the war. But Jeffrey has no intentions of returning to the life of an oddity. He was now Captain Jeffrey Hudson. Lord Minimus was gone, and he made it clear to everyone that he would not tolerate any further mockery. Any man who insulted him would pay with his life. A man named Charles Crofts thinks that Jeffrey's declaration of dignity is all an act and bursts out laughing. No one knows what Crofts said to Jeffrey, but it pissed him off, and he challenges Charles to a duel. Still laughing, Charles accepts this challenge from the great Lord Minimus, thinking this is all a part of a joke that will have a huge punchline in the end. But Jeffrey was not fooling around at all. The date of the duel is set for October, and it would be conducted with pistols on horseback on the day of the duel. When it came time for weapons to be presented, Jeffrey pulls out his tiny custom pistol, crosses, snickers, reaches into his pocket, and dramatically reveals a squirt gun, earning applause and laughter from the crowd. But Jeffrey was done being laughed at. He tightened his grip on his pistol and orders for Crofts to be handed a real gun. Crofts is quickly outfitted with his own pistol and was like, "Wait, are you for real?" The two men then mounted their horses, ride to a distance, and face each other. The signal is given, and they each charge forward. Crofts fires, first missing Jeffrey's small frame, and with laughter from the crowd echoing in his ears, Jeffrey raises his pistol, aims, and fires. His bullet strikes Crofts in the middle of his forehead and sends him toppling backward off his horse, dead before he hits the ground. Bro, that's like not funny at all. The crowd is shocked into silence. The Queen's dwarf has just murdered a noble by this time. Dueling was illegal in France, and Jeffrey was quickly arrested and tried for murder. He's saved at the last possible moment by Queen Henrietta, who negotiates for him to be exiled instead of executed. And so she and Jeffrey say their final goodbyes, and he sails off from France. Jeffrey soon learns just how good life was being laughed at as one of the Queen's curiosities when he's quickly captured at sea by Barbary pirates. He's sold into slavery and spends the next 25 years as a slave in North Africa. He finally escapes and makes it back to England just in time for a severe anti-Catholic purge and is thrown into prison for 2 years for being Catholic. He eventually is released and dies just a few short years later in 1682 penals and is buried in an unmarked grave. Jeffrey Hudson was more than a court jester. He was a soldier, a survivor, and a man who demanded to be seen, not for his size, but for his soul. Thank you guys for watching this video, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more crazy, dark royal stories from history, because sometimes truth is wilder than fiction.